Hello again, friends! And you are our friends, and welcome back to another edition of Jim Cornette's Drive Thru, a cold and dry edition of Jim Cornette's Drive Thru right here, wherever you find us, wherever you are on this day. Sucks here. I'm your host, the great Brian Last, and of course, the star of this show, the man who will be answering your questions, Mr. Jim Cornette.
Suckage! It's suckage here, Brian Last. You understand what I'm saying to you? Are you sure you want to do this? Are the people ready to listen to this program? Cold and dry. I don't know about dry. It's definitely colder than a well digger's ass, but it is not dry considering that snow is wet. At least last time I checked. And that's what we got around here. Not a lot of it, but there's a lot of cold. We didn't get a lot of snow. It's bullshit weather. Nobody did anything worth a shit over the weekend to talk about. I hope the people have some good questions lined up. Maybe Charlie in Starkville worked overtime this week for whatever you pay him or he pays you or whatever under-the-table dealings are going on in that relationship. I believe I mentioned to you earlier, before we went on the air here, that I've lost faith in humanity in general, and I'm just totally regusted and disgusted, dejected and defecated at the whole situation of everything. And you, Brian Last, you're trying to put on a happy face, but you're at your last frazzle. You're tap dancing on your last nerve right now with a variety of things you're trying to juggle, like the guy on the Ed Sullivan Show spinning the plates.
That's wrong. No. I want to smash.
There's a Vince story I haven't told you. Vince McMahon used to love when I did that.
Was Vince a big Ed Sullivan fan? Where was Vince on Sunday night?
Actually, yes, when he was a small or intermediate-sized child.
Intermediate.
Well, for growing up in those years, he watched the guy spinning the plates on the Ed Sullivan Show, and every time that something called for an analogy like that, where somebody is being called on to spin plates, I would go, and he would, he'd get it.
He's simple. He's a very simple man, isn't he?
He's a simple, easy man to understand.
Did you ever do Topo Giju with him? Did you ever just start?
Topo Giju. And now he's my little friend. Topo Giju. Sadite. I did that one. Everybody knows that one. Sadite. Senor Winces? Sadite. Anyway.
I hear things are really different backstage now.
Have you met my sister Sue? See? What does Sue do? Sews? She sews? See? She's a seamstress. See? Sue. Anyway. So this is your program that we're on here currently. But again, as I've mentioned, you're old Frazzle Appleton here today. And I'm off my feed. Got a little bit of the sour belches. I got started at my sleep. You haven't had a lot of sleep lately. Talk about some sleep, Brian. You haven't had sleep lately because of all the various things you have going on that when you successfully complete, you're going to reveal to the world, but not then because you don't want to paint yourself into a corner. But anyway.
I'm doing porn.
Oh, come on. For heaven's sake now, keep your mind out of the gutter. Everybody knows you wouldn't do that. There's not enough money in it these days.
That's true.
That's like wrestling. The amateurs have taken over. They'll do it just for the fun of it. And there you go. Porn and wrestling right side by side. The once great industries. But anyway, so where was I going with this? Oh, we're frazzled. You haven't had a lot of sleep. My sleep has been disrupted. Yesterday morning, it came time to restock the Sprite Zero here at the castle. Now, we got 2 refrigerators, 2 freezers full of food, but there's continuing the 16-ounce can and plastic bottle shortage of Sprite. You can get the 2 liters, and I've been on the 6-ounce metal cans. For some reason, you could get them, although they charge out the ass, but I'm almost out of those. I saved those for the shows here because you say that when I'm drinking out of a glass, I slurp, and it drives Jay Sharknado crazy.
It drives the listeners crazy. No one wants to hear that kind of noise right into a microphone. And if you do, you're some kind of weird ear pervert, and you need to do something else with your life.
Anyway.
Oh. You can leave those in, Jace. Let people hear that. Let people hear that. Disgusting.
So anyway, I had to go to the store, but in the state of Kentucky here, the state of confusion, I saw on the news 2 days ago that in Jefferson County, Kentucky here, in the metropolitan Louisville area, 1 of 15 people is infected with the COVID. And those odds aren't good when you go into Kroger and there's 250 people in there. So what I did the smart thing, because again, they will not force or demand or instruct or mandate or whatever phrase you want to use the people that go into a fucking store where food is sold, or the people that work there for that matter. They're slobbering all over everything too. So I get up Sunday morning when it's 23 degrees outside on a holiday weekend, and it's not even light outside yet. And I go over there to get the Sprite and a couple of other things real quickly. And again, you know, it was empty except for the people stocking everything. Of course, the deli isn't open and the meat and seafood counter isn't open. And there's only one checkout clerk on the manned checkout aisle. But since there's no customers in there, it doesn't matter. And I got my Sprite, but that screwed my sleep up. Normally I get up early, but I gradually come to consciousness in the house here. I don't just assault my senses by going out in a public place and out in the weather and everything. So I went to sleep early last night, woke up at 4 something this morning. And then I had to force myself to stay bundled up in the warm blankie that I was in for another few hours. But I've lost my faith in the human race in general and my hometown Kentuckians as not having the goddamn sense, as Mama Cornette used to say, that God gave a goose. They've just seen on the news, it's everywhere. 1 in 15 people that you come in contact with around here is going to be slobbering infectious germs at you, but they won't wear a mask in the food store. People just don't have good sense.
We need a war on defiance.
What did Defiance, Ohio ever do to you? It's a fine town. I've been through there many times. Speaking of things that have not been done to you, have you had the opportunity yet? People, I'm not talking about you now, Brian. I'm talking about people out there in the public eye or in the public sphere. All the people listening to us, have you had the opportunity to go to JimCornette.com and click on the banner on the homepage and go to Heritage Auctions, where you will see in all their magnificent glory the 1982 Wrestling All-Stars trading card set from my personal collection featuring my photography that is being auctioned off as we speak right now. If you haven't, folks, I urge you to do that. You can go to JimCornette.com and the poster. The banner is right there on the front page, and if you click on that, you're going to see pictures of the graded cards. Of course, the whole thing's a high-grade set. You'll get the information on everything and how to place a bid. Most importantly, don't be left out. And that auction concludes, as they say, on January 28th, which will be right about the time. Actually, shortly thereafter, we will be opening up Cornette's Collectibles at JimCornette.com for more good Cornette stuff under the auspices of Hotchkiss, Fanny, and Felcher Featherbottom, my new team. I got a whole team now, Brian. Before, Hotchkiss was the team all by himself. Now I actually have a team.
Do you think Hotchkiss is feeling secure in his job?
Well, he doesn't think I'm going to fire him for his aunt and uncle. And besides,
it's a heck of a move.
Well, also, they're not that, how can I say this? They're intellectually challenged. They can't do all the high-tech, internet, interweb stuff that he does with all of the the newfangled machinery. They're more of, hammer and chisel type of people. So they're going to be doing some of the grunt work, as they call it. And Hotchkiss is going to be cracking the whip on them because he's the smart one. I'll have you know he graduated 6th grade.
All right. Well, that's something to be commended for. Are we ready for questions? Is it my show
I don't know.
yet?
Well, I'll ask you one thing. On the way back from the grocery, this is the most important. I got 10 2-liters, which I hate, right? For all the reasons I've mentioned.
10
of them. Just because I'm hoping by the time I go through those 10, they'll have the cans back in stock. But it's a vicious circle. But on the way back from the grocery store, Brian, I'll have you know, I passed a gas station, and in this gas station there was 2 signs in the front window: self-service and help wanted. So I pulled in, went in, and gave myself the job. So now I'm going to have to change my schedule because I'm running the whole goddamn station. So we're going to have to change our recording schedule just to make sure that I can fulfill all of my commitments.
All right. It sounds like you have a lot of commitments to fulfill. We'll see what we can do.
Someone did use the word committed in relation to me. They said I either had been or should be, something like that. More committed or just committed in general. You think I should be committed, Brian?
No, I think you're all right. I think you should stay away from everyone. But if you stay away from everyone, you're all right. You're good.
I'm a happy guy when I stay away from people.
For both parties. I think it works best for everyone that way. Well, we have questions. Unless you have any emails or anything you want to get to, or
it's a free and easy type of. Well, hey, hold
cold
on.
And dry.
I do actually have. Hold on here 1 second. Let me see if I can find this.
Sounds like you found it.
Well, that's what I was looking for. A very dedicated listener of ours, Adam, in Edmonton, Alberta, wrote, and this was from December, but I've mentioned on the experience that I'm going through a lot of the emails that I haven't been able to keep up with and on the new site, etc. He writes that he wanted to get a head start on one of his favorite and most anticipated events of the year, the 2nd annual Corny Awards. See,
oh, come on.
What his favorite and most anticipated event of the year is one that we actually forgot all the fuck about 6 weeks after we did it and haven't thought about it since. But
we didn't even finish coming up with the awards.
Yeah, we didn't even actually finish the whole bit. It was just stalled in committee. But it says, last year, Jim, you were nice enough to read my suggestions for Corny Awards on the experience. That's because that way we didn't have to do any work. We could just read his. And he says, both you and Brian lambasted me for not picking winners and for the names of some awards. We made fun of his award names, but also I remember this, there was an issue that he didn't pick any winners. He just came up with award names, which was not completing his work.
Was it for you to pick the winner?
Well, I wasn't going to do that much put that much effort into it. But anyway, he has reviewed and revised his list this year. And he gave just a couple. I just want to read a couple from Adam in Edmonton. The Dr. D Slap the Shit Out of You Award to the wrestler or moment which has exposed or disrespected the professional wrestling industry most egregiously in a calendar year. I'm going to give the runner-up first.
I don't know if that's going to fit on a trophy.
Well, hold on. Do we have a drum roll? I don't have a drum roll. Wait a minute. Hold on. Do I? Hold on. No, that's not really a drum roll, is it? Oh, well. The runner-up is the AEW Exploding Ring. And the winner, Chris Jericho's Crash Pad.
So we're supposed to want to slap Chris Jericho's Crash Pad?
No, we're to the wrestler or moment which has exposed or disrespected the professional wrestling industry most egregiously we present the Dr. D slap the shit. You should have the shit slapped out of you, whoever's responsible.
Oh, that's okay. So it's multiple people then. It's a group effort, I would think, that you would have to slap, because it's not just Jericho. It's a group effort that got
he didn't really haul the cardboard there in the back of his fucking Dodge Charger or whatever. There was a bunch of people that assembled that. And same thing for the exploding ring. You didn't just have one guy eat a bag of popcorn and come out with that popcorn fart. It was a group of people getting together and saying, this is the fucking best we can do.
And to be fair, that was an awful moment, Jericho on the crash pad, but that couldn't have been the most business-exposing moment of the year, I wouldn't think.
I think the exploding ring should change places. Let the crash pad be the runner-up, and the exploding ring was...
When did Bray Wyatt burn to death? It wouldn't have been
a business expose, except they laid there after. Poor Kingston had to lay there like he was dead after the fucking kids' pop rocks went off.
When did Bray Wyatt burn to death?
Oh, that was the previous year. Yeah, we're not. Yeah. When? And
I've seen so many fires; they all go together.
Yeah, but they've had more firings than fires in the WWE this year. Moving on, apparently old Adam from Edmonton has a bit of a pert pecker for old Chris Jericho, because he names the second one the Jerichovid Fall from Grace Award, awarded to the wrestler who has fallen from grace in looks, skill, and entertainment factor the most in a calendar year.
All right.
And I don't know if I agree with his runner-up choice. His runner-up...
Didn't you want a drum roll?
Well, yeah, but I thought it would end sooner or later.
Oh, I thought it was supposed to go behind you.
Your arms are getting tired, aren't they, at that point? But they're very good that you found that. The runner-up. It doesn't have the broomch. It's just endless rolling with no...
Oh, man. Buddy Rich. He was so good.
Oh, my God. Now you shouldn't have said. Now we might get popped for copyright.
That's not Buddy Rich. That's not Buddy Rich.
If they can identify the artist, we might get a letter. Anyway, his runner-up is no more drums, is Goldberg. And I don't necessarily know that Goldberg is fallen apart in the past year any more than he was the previous year, the year before that, the year before that. But however, the winner is named, or the winner that he is named does kind of carry the idea of this. Poor old Matt Hardy. Poor old Matt Hardy. We've got another one. No drum rolls here. This is the Stephen P. New Award to the best aired moment where Jim almost needed Stephen P. New, but didn't.
Let's hear this.
The runner-up is any number of Jim's various spots for Code Academy, whereby Jim deliberately or inadvertently encourages the use of their services to perform acts of espionage or revolution against domestic or foreign governments. I have no recollection of that.
That's a good pick.
But the 2021 winner and honorary recipient, Brian Last, for his rant about the bulbous and the ballless one on 605 Super Podcast number 104.
Look at that. An award winner. The award-winning great Brian Last. You haven't said, I mean, you're reading his awards. Are you accepting his awards?
I can accept them, or I can indict someone, or I can be on whichever end of that. And by the way, a major award like that, you're going to be getting that leg lamp in the mail. The cornyism of the year, to the spoken one-liner from Jim Cornette, which becomes the most repeated in the calendar year. Actually, it's not a one-liner, because that's a snappy bit of repartee that a comedian would, but what he is here is saying is just a catchphrase, maybe, like the kids would call it. The runner-up is lazy booking. While the 2021 winner is like Mussolini. What do you think, Brian? Are those in the proper order?
I think it's a sad indictment of the state of affairs today, but that I think actually would be the 2021. What was it? Quotable Jim Cornette of the year, whatever it was.
Cornyism of the year. Well, wait a minute. What do you mean the state of things? That means that my state is in disarray.
Well, the fact that all of a sudden you have a hit song at this point in your career, it's a weird move. Sorry.
Well, people have, I'm a muse for people. They write songs about me and then I sing songs and it inspires people to write more songs. I write the songs and make the whole world sing. Anyway,
there's more.
Yes, there's a new award. The Hotchkiss Featherbottom 9-Finger Special, formerly known as the Hotchkiss Featherbottom 11-Finger Special, a.k.a. Nickname of the Year, to the best nickname which Jim bestowed upon an individual in a calendar year. He's got 2 runner-ups here. Second runner-up, the Corpse Referee. But, I mean, come on, that's not like... Well, it's not like that. That's the thing that you don't instantly see when you see a picture of him. I mean, I've never. What Rick Knox is probably my age, right? 60-ish.
Do you think he's that old?
Well, look at his face.
I mean, I know he looks really old.
But the thing is, he doesn't have, or doesn't appear to have, he has no hair on his head. He's got no mustache. He's got no beard. I haven't really paid attention, but he's the kind of person that just gives you the impression that he doesn't have any eyelashes or eyebrows either. He's just an egg sticking up through the neck of a shirt. But a wrinkled egg. I've never seen a wrinkled egg. And so that's and he's had all the blood and life drained from his, I mean, the pallor of him. His skin is like just a couple of shades lighter gray than the Hulk was in issue 1 back in 1962. Look it up, kids. So, I mean, I think it's kind of obvious. It wasn't really a stretch to name him the Corpse Referee. Don't you think?
As we're talking about this, I'm trying to picture him in my head. I can't put an age on him.
Well, it's like he's been mummified in some description or pickled or preserved or whatever, to where the skin is not really molting and falling off anymore. It's kind of sticking there, but it doesn't have any energy or life to it. Anyway, the first runner-up, bank-addicted drug robber.
That's a good one.
It was a good one. Just one of those things that happened serendipitously. And the winners of the nickname of the year, Fubar Makafakaloob and Slapco Fudd.
I agree.
The Saudi announce team, I believe they were. Anyway, and lastly, the new award, the Einar's Not Dead Award, Musical Celebration for Auditory Contributor of the Year, awarded to the Best Song Musical Submission Artist of the Year. Except this is kind of a hometown decision here. The runner-up was Piss Jerichunk. The winner, the 2021 winner, Rocky the Ramone. But there's one ahead of it. A Lifetime Achievement Award. That trumps everything. That's just the big one. The Cult of Meat with Extra Cheese by James E. Cornette. There you go.
All right. There you go. There's someone.
Hold on. Yeah. And the crowd's going wild here on the red carpet at the awards.
Well, moving on from there. Thank you, Adam, whatever his name was.
Adam up in Edmonton.
Alberta, Canada.
Did you see any of this weekend's wrestling on television?
I did not. I saw some stuff on social media, short form clips, but I did not watch too much. WWE, there's nothing that usually pulls you to it except for that thread of one good segment with a few of the only good people that are on that show. But with Rampage, there's nothing pulling me to that show right now.
Well, I'll tell you what. There should have been shit pulling you in the opposite direction. You should have been avoiding that, like, don't go into the light. Let me just take 1 minute to explain to you what that they tried. Well, they did succeed in foisting it off on the viewers, but they tried to get me to watch it and failed. Friday night, 10 o'clock on national television, they've got an hour of TNT's time. Adam Cole versus Trent. And Adam Cole had Bobby Fish, Kyle O'Reilly, Britt Baker, and the Hardley Boys at ringside, while Trent had all the rest of the Puddin' Gang. And you'll never guess what happened. They went 15 minutes, and then everybody got in a big schmoz, had a sloppy fight, and Cole won somehow. And then Shawn Spears. When is the last time that he wrestled on television?
Oh, I'm not sure. Probably a multi-man match a while back. He's one of those guys, although not the quality of FTR in our eyes, he's used just as infrequently in the ring on the show as they are.
Well, in this case, though, since he's going to wrestle this coming week against Punk, he had to get a win, right? So he hasn't had a singles match on TV in like a year and a half, but he's got to get a win. So he beat a young man by the name of Andrew Everett in about a minute. And the only thing, and somebody tweeted about this, I did not know this, but apparently old Andrew is from North Carolina and has been working independents out there forever. And he got to do absolutely nothing except he got shot off to the corner and did an up and over, but it was like a one-handed cartwheel over the top rope with grace and agility, and landed on the apron, and then fucking Spears foiled whatever, and boom, one tackle pancake. But I said, just from that one move, I at least wanted to see if this guy could do any wrestling moves that were equally as impressive as that, but he didn't get a chance to do any, so we'll never know. Then they had a 6-girl tag team match. Red Velvet, Layla Hirsch, and Chris Flatlander against Penelope Pitstop, the Bunny, and Nyla Rose. And I'll have you know, Brian, that the main event on the program, and this is another of your daily reminders, dear listeners, that FTR and the Briscoes are not even working an angle. I think at this point they're actually pissed because the Briscoes do get a little touchy. But they're jousting at each other on Twitter, and on national television, we got the Dork Order for the tag team title against Jungle Boy and Dino Douche, which doesn't even make any sense if you overlook the fact that the Dork Order shouldn't be on television and Dino Douche is an imbecile. They're both babyface teams. And that was the program, except, Brian, call off the dogs, call in the FBI, call back Dog the Bounty Hunter, we found Jay Lethal. Did you hear about this?
This was one of the clips I saw on social media.
Ricky Starks is doing commentary at the table, and Jay Lethal, because Jay Lethal has now apparently been pressed into service having to pay the part that for some unfathomable reason they had given to Leo Rush of being Dante Martin's big brother. And Jay Lethal came out and confronted Ricky Starks and cut a promo telling him he was sick to his stomach what Team Taz has been doing to Dante and the way they jerked him around when he joined them for, 5 to 7 days? And did absolutely nothing in Team Taz until he ripped the Team Taz armband off in the ring on TV and threw it down. But then Lethal cut a little close to the bone. He said, nobody wants Ricky Starks' FTW title except him. since it means something to Ricky Starks, because it's not a real thing, but since it means something to you, I want it. You asshole. And the referees came out and they started trash talk, jaw jacking, and they were getting separated. And of course, as if everybody didn't already know this, Jay Lethal can talk his ass off. He can cut a great promo. Go along with the fact that he can work, along with the fact that he's not a goddamn trampoline practicing imbecile. So we found him finally. And I guess since Leo managed to run his fucking pie hole about Tony Khan on Twitter, now he doesn't get to be Dante Martin's big brother. Jay Lethal does. And I don't know whether that makes any more sense than Leo Rush being Dante Martin's protector and mentor or whatever, but at least we get to see Jay Lethal on TV, maybe.
I will say, despite at times wacky behavior, at times just maybe calling out your boss on social, whatever it may be, there's always something. I find Leo Rush to be one of the most entertaining guys in the entire business. I enjoy him in the ring because he wrestles like a creative small guy. I like his promo. I really like everything about this guy. And I hope he gets his shit straightened out. I enjoy his shit, and it's always the same thing. I enjoy him for a few weeks, and then he's gone for a year. I enjoy him for a few weeks. He has a crazy weekend, and then we don't see him for months. I don't know.
In multiple companies, right? In multiple scenarios. It's like, he's where's Leo? We ain't seen him in a while.
And then he just pops up. He does leverage buyouts. That was like a week or two, and then he's just the mentor to Dante Martin. They had this short thing, and now he's just gone.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about him getting rich, being a big businessman, leveraged buyouts.
That was like 2 weeks.
Apparently somebody bought him out.
Very good. Right. Very well played.
You're done. You're finished here. We're all set. But anyway, that was Friday night's AEW. That was the most painless AEW review I've ever done. But the situation, Brian, was not any better over on the Fox network 2 hours earlier, because SmackDown was on Friday night also. And I got used to watching SmackDown for a few weeks there, as we both did, to see Brock and Reigns and Heyman, right? Or one of the three, or two of the three, or some combination of the three.
Right.
Well, now, they've fucked us around, because Reigns got COVID, so Brock had to win the other belt at day one, which means that now they're over on Raw, so we get the packages of things that have gone on previously, but we didn't have Brock or Heyman on SmackDown. We have Reigns, who's now going to be facing Seth Rollins at the Royal Rumble. It's starting to get confusing, and they're both heels. But real quickly, I want to just illustrate what they gave people on 2 hours. This is not national cable on TNT. This is Fox Network. The Usos did a promo in the ring and set up a fatal four-way with the winner to get a tag team title shot with four teams. Los Lotharios.
Who's that?
I don't know. Cesaro and somebody. I think it was Ricochet. I missed it, maybe. No, Ricochet was later on. Jinder Mahal and his new friend, I swear to God, his name is Shanky. 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 And the Viking Raiders, who couldn't look more fucking ridiculous if they were coming out with fucking Carmen Miranda fruit hats on. They got the face paint and the Viking shit, and they're just gimmicked all up, and they look like they're being forced to come march out there in that apparatus. So that was a big four-way tag team match. Naomi and Cruella DeVille still hate each other. And old Sonya Deville is not bad at delivering her material, but Naomi sounds like she's reading from a teenage romance novel. That kind of tone. Sami Zayn and Johnny Knoxville hate each other. And Sami Zayn was making fun of Johnny Knoxville, the jackass guy, by having people push him down the ramp in a shopping cart. And then Natalya wrestled Aaliyah. What now? What?
I just want to say what a missed opportunity. AEW could have done a deal with them, had Johnny Knoxville and Darby. We would have finally gotten this big match they've been building up for years.
That actually might have made sense.
Exactly.
That's the only proper usage for one of these stupid jackass jackoffs in wrestling would be to fucking have Darby Allin fucking skateboard on top of him or something. Natalya and Aaliyah. Guess what the result of that was?
Fast forward?
No.
Oh.
I'm talking about the result of the match.
Oh. It was Natalya.
Aaliyah beat Natalya in 3 seconds.
Oh.
The all-time world record victory in WWE, according to them. Lita and Charlotte did an in-ring promo with each other, and it was the best thing on the show. Lita came out, said it's the first time she's been on SmackDown in 20 years, but she's been around more recently than that. But still, she's still over. She looks great. She looks the same as she looked the last time I saw her years ago. And you could tell that she had the feel-good wanting to be in the Royal Rumble speech written for her, but she did it just because she's got more experience, with a lot more. And she worked with a lot more experienced people when she was in the locker room than they are now, and with a lot more experienced people in charge of the wrestling rather than just the interchangeable comedy writers. So she can do this, right? And she made the point they didn't have a women's Royal Rumble in her day. That's why she wants to enter it. That was an hour we didn't have to skip of the Royal Rumble back in those days. But anyway, Charlotte came out. If they were just building Charlotte and Lita, I'd like to see it. But I'm not going to watch the whole goddamn women's Rumble. I'm just warning y'all.
Oh, come on. It'll be great.
We'll get down to the last few if they're in it. But Charlotte comes out in a blue and white rhinestone-studded bodysuit. She looked like the Ice Queen. She's a fucking star. And you know why she's a star besides talent and look? Because she's convinced she's a star. And whether that makes her egotistical or not, I could give a fuck. Because you know who is usually convinced that they're stars? Stars. And she made fun of Lita. She's going to win the Rumble and pick her opponent for the first time ever. What a bitch she is. And then Lita got the people chanting giant head at Charlotte in addressing the situation of her having a giant head. But these girls' promo, it made you believe that they, even if you know the business is a work, they're enjoying being snotty bitches to each other. Because if you could lose yourself in that, right? And then finally, Lita went to slap Charlotte. Charlotte ducked. Lita kicked her in the gut and gave her a twist of fate and rolled out, and Charlotte's nursing her wounds. That's the only thing on this whole television program. Well, I won't say that. Reigns and Rollins. Hold on. We'll get there. Sheamus wrestled Ricochet.
Sheamus?
Yes. Naomi and Cruella still hate each other. I wrote Naomi is the worst actress in show business history. The New Day came out to the ring. Well, Kofi read one of those scrolls like a proclamation in medieval times?
Sure, of course.
He read a scroll in an English accent. And then suddenly Happy Corbin and Mosh Pit Jones, or whatever his fucking name is, came out, and Kofi wrestled Mosh Pit. And then they had an in-ring face-to-face with Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins that they made you wait an hour and 50 minutes to see. They'd been plugging it all through the show. But now in this scenario, Roman Reigns is the babyface because at least he's a cooler badass than Seth freaking Rollins. So the people are starting to chant, or not chant, but cheer for, well, whatever, reaction for Roman. Wasn't it about 6, 7, maybe 8 years ago now? I mean, time flies. When Roman Reigns was the top babyface and they were booing him out of the building. And we said, God damn it, just switch him heel for a year or two and make him a badass heel, and then people will want to fucking cheer him. Well, son of a gun, who could have ever predicted that besides us? But anyway, and Seth tries to go do the Shield fist bump, right? And Roman blows it off. That's beneath me now, dude. But they're playing a lot on that they used to be in the group, the Shield. It was Roman Reigns, it was Seth Rollins, and a fella named Dean Ambrose. It was in the Shield, right, Brian? You remember, it was in all the wrestling magazines, the Shield. They were a pretty over group.
They were pretty good.
And what was that, 4 or 5 years ago? Again, time flies if I'm not chronologically
Actually,
accurate.
A bit longer than that, because they debuted when Punk was still there.
Aha, well, and that was 2014 at least. So point is, for a while, they were there and they were over. And then they eventually, as they do, always broke them up and blah, blah, blah. But do you remember who Uncle Dave, one of the most astute wrestling observers out there, picked to be the star in that group?
I don't actually.
You don't remember who Uncle Dave said was going to be, it was the big star, was the sleeper, was the great worker, was the shining example.
Was it Ambrose?
Yes, it was. He's the guy that should be the breakout star when they first brought the Shield up. Reigns, Rollins, and Ambrose. Uncle Dave was, Dean Ambrose is now, that was a WWE name. That was his slave name. He's now known as Jon Moxley.
By the way, a better name, too.
Well, yeah, actually, Dean Ambrose sounds like goddamn the villain in one of the fucking 80s college movies with John Belushi, right? And Dean Ambrose is going to suspend us. But I just what an incredible eye that Uncle Dave has for talent. When that group first appeared, is easily the breakout star of this group. He can do it all, and he's a promo. He reminds me of Terry Funk. I kept reading this shit going, who the fuck is he looking at? Well, now Roman Reigns is inarguably one of the 2 biggest box office attractions in professional wrestling in the world. The other one being Brock Lesnar. I don't think anybody can argue that point. Seth Rollins is about to main event one night of a 2-night stadium WrestleMania spectacular weekend, wrestling for one of the world championships of the biggest company in the world. And Jon Moxley just got out of rehab and is being advertised on garbage championship wrestling on fucking live internet pay-per-view television. He has an unerring eye for talent, does Uncle Dave. We're going to talk about Moxley's first match back also in a minute, but Reigns did a great job in this interview. He's an actor without being an actor, because he can say his material that suits him, that he feels better than most people can do the same thing with theirs. He gets his attitude and his fucking aura over. And Seth Rollins wasn't bad here either, because they've got something to talk about that people actually might be interested in because of the Shield group and their previous interaction with each other. And Rollins' story is going to be that he held Roman Reigns' hand and got him over. And because Roman Reigns was the green one in the Shield days. And that's true. And he had a great heel attitude delivering that. And Reigns had a great line where he said he doesn't think that Seth Rollins is a megastar on his level. And if he wanted somebody if he wanted to pick somebody to main event WrestleMania with a megastar, he wouldn't have picked Seth Rollins. He'd have picked his wife. Oh, which is one of those lines, again, to be subtly babyface and get all the guys who are frustrated that they don't have a fucking girl as hot as Becky Lynch to go, oh, we got him. But then suddenly the Usos came in and Seth just ducked and dodged and escaped and left. And that was it. But that was 2 hours of a wrestling program.
How many minutes of actual wrestling, if you had to guess? Because I know you didn't actually time it.
Well, I don't know because I fast forwarded through a lot. But since the first hour of the show pretty much was that four-way tag and Natalya and Aaliyah, and we know that was 3 seconds. So there was very little, and what was there was bleh. But do you want to talk about the elephant in the room before we go to the folks' questions? The Moxley business.
Oh, is that the elephant in the room?
Let's get it over with.
I didn't know that was the elephant in the room. Okay.
It's the elephant in the room to me that shows that Tony Khan has, I can't say lost control of his company because he never had any control, but he doesn't have any control over his company, his employees, people he pays massive amounts of money to. They're just, Tony, the next time we see a picture of Tony, he'll probably have cleat marks and fucking shoe prints on his face from people walking all over it. Have you heard about the big announcement about Jon Moxley's first match back out of rehab?
I saw something on social media that he was having a match with Game Changer Wrestling, I believe.
Garbage Championship Wrestling. They try to call themselves something else, but it's Garbage Championship Wrestling. But the point is, again, Tony, you run and Make-A-Wish, you're nicer to these guys than they are the kids. Brian, correct me where I am wrong. Tony Khan hires Jon Moxley, gives him, I'm assuming, a fortune per year. I think he's probably crazy enough to be giving him $1 million. Makes him one of his only, he's only had 4 world champions, right? Moxley was one of them. Let him have his stupid garbage indie style deathmatch bullshit on real television. Even if they weren't supposed to be that kind of match, that's the only kind Moxley can have. So we've indulged him with the 500-yard walk into the ring from the parking lot, like his BO is so bad that nobody wants to dress with him. He's got to come in from the outside where he's got some air. We're going to indulge that. We're going to pay for his music. Wild Thing. We're going to pay for rights on that. We're going to put him over as the world champion. We're going to let him do these ridiculous indie-style matches on our television show incessantly, long after they get stale. And then when we've got something planned, obviously they're beginning a heel turn that they're just starting to tease, and he's going to be in this title picture, and they had the big pay-per-view coming up, and I can't remember what all the fucking plans were for him. And his book comes out. That's when he announces that he's going to rehab. And Tony Khan says, good, that's the most important thing. Get well, get healthy, as everybody does. And go on, and I bet you, I'm not a betting man, but I believe a safe bet would be that since Jon Moxley has last wrestled in AEW, he's gotten a check regularly. Whatever interval he normally gets him, he's probably still got it. And they're probably still very sizable. And then, just 3 or 4 days ago, the announcement is made that Jon Moxley, a returning hero, apparently he's completed his rehab and he will be coming back to the ring. Not for the people who paid him all this money, who gave him these titles, who put him on television, who let him have a fucking spider web made of barbed wire that he could take a bump off a light tower on, who publicly supported his efforts to go to rehab and get healthy. He's not coming back for them. Well, he will eventually, but it's more important that he goes to Garbage Championship Wrestling and have an indie match, which is where his heart is, and his mind is, and his talent is, in a building that Ring of Honor used to sell out 4 times a year, instead of on national cable television, or being saved back for what I understand is the next pay-per-view that old Tony is going to run and foot the bill on. It's coming up in about 6 weeks. That something could have been done there. Or he could have made a surprise appearance on the free television program that Tony airs on TNT or TBS, depending on which night it is. Probably want the TBS one now for the most viewers on Wednesday night. Everybody thinks Moxley's in rehab. Nobody's heard a word or a peep from Moxley. Hadn't said boo to a goose. Moxley shows up and takes a goddamn fishing rod wrapped in barbed wire and shoves it up Adam Page's ass. Shit, he's back, and boy, he's pissed. No, now we know he's out of rehab. He's advertising, going to show up because the last thing he wants to do is let his friends down in these garbage shows that he plays on, while somebody else pays him hundreds of thousands of dollars, potentially a month, to fucking do what, I don't know. So now if he does show up, they're going to be what? Every AEW fan now, every time they go to a show, they're going to be looking around the corner. Moxley probably here, and he'll probably show up fairly quick. But they could have made an impact. Or just the idea that Tony Khan could have had the opportunity for his company to say, Jon Moxley has emerged from rehab and will be joining us again on such and such date in such and such place. Get your tickets now. But no, it's more important. This is why this guy flunked out of the WWF. It's more important for him to have his fucking garbage matches with bank-addicted drug robbers, which they even humored him on that too. And Tony Khan put the fucking goof gauge on his television show to humor this fucking guy. And then Tony has more fucking Moxley splooge on his face than Renee has ever dreamed of.
Oh, come on. Let's keep it professional here.
Then he just spit in his eye. For fuck's sake, how do you do that? You mean to tell me that in any other situation in the history of this business that Jon Moxley would have not been on the phone with Tony Khan going, okay, I'm out, or I'm getting out on such and such date, and how can we arrange my return? And the first thing that Tony Khan or any other promoter would have said would be, well, how about on one of my shows? Not somebody else's that you're just doing for fun because you like that bullshit. You have a professional responsibility to me for me to get any goddamn benefit out of your return that might be had. And what is the benefit now, Brian? Where would Jon Moxley land right now? Because that's another thing. You want to know why all the guys in the old days worked through injuries and never asked for time off and didn't want any fucking break or any vacation? Because somebody comes along and does it better and they realize, well, they don't really need you. Are you telling me that Jon Moxley, when he returns to AEW, heel, babyface, man, woman, child, animal, vegetable, or mineral, is going to be more important than Bryan Danielson?
No, I'm not saying he's going to be more important than Bryan Danielson, no.
Okay. It's going to be more important than CM Punk?
No, of course not.
No. Okay, well, now there's another world champion. Is he going to be more important than Hangman Adam Page or featured better? Can you feature somebody else better than your world champion?
I think he's bigger than Adam Page. I think in terms of star power with the AEW audience, and even an audience outside of AEW, he's the third guy maybe after Danielson and Punk.
Well, yeah, but here's the thing. Tony doesn't book based on who's over or who's talented. He books based on who he likes, and he tries to take care of his champions. So as far as the championship, as far as now, you've got to have Paige, at least, whether it's in the fans' eyes or not, Paige is presented over Moxley, Punk's over Moxley, Danielson's over Moxley. I submit to you MJF is more important than Moxley, because now MJF is finally getting his chance, and he's not only a worker, a pro wrestler, not a stunt show guy, but he can fucking talk, and he's new. We've seen Moxley shit. Moxley does the deranged interviews and sniffs a lot, and fucking his eyes roll back in his head, and he talks about ripping people's arms out, and then he never rips anybody's arm out, and he has the same goofy indie match. MJF is new, MJF is valuable, and MJF will be the subject of a bidding war if everybody knows what they're doing in 2 years. So therefore, Paige, Danielson, Punk, MJF, we've already got to number fucking 5. And now we haven't even talked about Sting or Darby. We haven't even talked about the EVPs. You think, Olivier, we can't have this vacation permanently. All apologies to Aerosmith. No permanent vacation. So he's going to come back. Where's Olivier going to be?
Wherever he wants to be.
Exactly. So Moxley picked a bad time to go on vacation.
He'll be fine. No, but Moxley coming back, Moxley working for the company he's about to work for, that's approved by Tony Khan, so he's not doing anything behind Tony's back. If Tony approves it.
Well, of course.
And he asked for it. It's not his fault.
Because he has no balls, and he has no control, and he has no business sense, because he's never done this before, and he doesn't know how to tell people what to fucking do. So, because refer back to C has no balls. And when they were on the phone, what do you think? Jesus Christ. Let's say when Austin got dropped on his head, SummerSlam 97, and he was in the fucking designated injured list all that time. And I can't even remember, truthfully, because we did this a number of times, but specifically what he did to show up back on Raw after he was at that point with the injury. But he never had a conversation with Vince McMahon on the phone where he called Vince and said, well, you know, Vince, I'm ready to come back to television, but I want to work this independent show first. Yeah, they got a big thing right down here in Boerne, Texas, right next to San Antonio, and I'd love to, they're going to give Bruiser Brody a plaque, and I'm going to go walk out and accept it and stunner somebody, but then I'll be back to Raw. For any good intention or charitable feeling on his part or wanting to help out a local promoter or whatever, what do you think Vince McMahon would have said to Steve Austin? Are you out of your fucking mind? Why do you think, again, this is why everybody's given their notice for the WWE, not only because they're treated like piss ants and field hands and pieces of shit, but because they see another company where it's like fucking recess all day long at school and the teacher turns their back on everything. You're going from one extreme to another. You're going from a place where you're, like I said, you're treated like a goddamn complete piece of shit, to a place where you can get paid limitless amounts of money, never be fired for anything, and allowed to do whatever you want. Except if the EVPs think you're better than they are and don't want you to show it. Then you're not allowed to do everything you want. Otherwise than that, you're pretty much allowed to do anything you want. But my God, I will say to Jon Moxley now the same thing that I said to Vince McMahon when he wanted to beat Antonio Pena's champion in 4 minutes on syndication. I said, well, you've got him down there on the floor. Why don't you just piss in his mouth while you're at it? If he wanted to play and have his little hobby instead of putting together, model airplanes, if he wants to go do garbage shows and Tony Khan is willing to let him do it, well, then that's fine and dandy. but your first responsibility is to your fucking job and your business and your profession. If Tony Khan is going to put up with everything he's put up from this guy already, and he announces his return for, good God. No wonder I know they love to pal around with Tony down there, but how long do you think after he leaves the room before they start laughing and rolling their eyes?
I don't know.
But it's your show.
It's my show. I got all these questions about how you secretly work for AEW. I guess I won't ask any of them this week here on the show.
Do you mean that I was somewhat prescient in stopping those questions before they started by going on a rant about how the boss of AEW has no balls?
If you don't like what they're doing, why don't you just get a painting made of what you like?
Well, that's something that now that we're creating a lot of new memories, Brian. We're creating a lot of new memories these days because we've talked about our friends before at Paint Your Life and how that they can commemorate great moments in your life, people in your family, friends, loved ones. Well, now they're also talking about the way that they can take modern memories and turn them into art. A lot of times people, they're on vacation. It's a family visit. You're visiting friends and loved ones. Everybody's got the phone these days, the smartphone. They snap a picture. But a picture on a phone, it doesn't look as grand and as memorable and as glorious and as hotsy-totsy and ritzy. It's just like you're farting through silk if you had a painting of such a thing as that. So now you can hold on to your new memories, turn them into art that lasts forever, courtesy of our friends at paintyourlife.com. Whether you're out traveling, taking a vacation, who the fuck is on a vacation now in this goddamn miserable winter fucking iceberg weather? But if you're an Eskimo and you're building an igloo currently and you want a painting of that, but what I would do is I would try to go for recent happier times and better weather. And whether it's a gift for a birthday or anniversary or a wedding or whatever, paintyourlife.com and their team of world-class artists can turn your photograph into a painting, into art that lasts forever. Look how long the Mona Lisa has been around. People will be looking at your fucking grandmother 500 years from now and thinking that she was a big deal because somebody made a painting of her. Brian, did I ever tell you about my grandmother, Coco? She was a lovely old woman. Do you know what I would say to her if she was standing here in front of me right now?
Oh, no.
I'd say, Coco, what are you doing? You've been dead for 30 years. But anyway,
Coco.
Folks, you can choose from a team of world-class artists and work with them until every detail is perfect. And the user-friendly platform at Paint Your Life makes it easy to order a custom-made, hand-painted portrait in less than 5 minutes. And you can receive your portrait in as little as 2 weeks. You can send any picture. We've talked about it, and they will go from there. So, folks, once again, paintyourlife.com, and there's no risk. If you don't love the final painting, your money is refunded, guaranteed. As a matter of fact, if you buy the deluxe model and you get a painting of a family member and you don't love it, they will not only refund your money for the painting, they will send somebody to collect that family member and give you a new one.
No, they will not.
You could get on the premium plan, you can get new grandparents.
There will be no one sent to your house. You have nothing to worry about, whether you have a security system or not. Paint Your Life is ready to take care of you with a fine oil painting. There will be no hostages.
There will be no hostages, but there will be plenty of compliments and fond wishes over the finished product. Folks, if you want to get 20% off your painting at Paint Your Life, you got to do some work here and free shipping. You got to text the word DRIVE, D-R-I-V-E, to 64,000. That is DRIVE to 64,000, 64000. And that's 20% off and free shipping if you do those things. Paint Your Life. Celebrate the moments that matter most. Terms apply. Available at paintyourlife.com/terms. I thought you could get new grandparents.
Well, Jim, let's get back to wrestling. Let's get away from grandparents and abduction or whatever else was going on in the world of Jim Cornette during that last spot. But Jim,
just things I've heard.
We have breaking news as we are recording right now. Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful.com is reporting. Here's his tweet.
Now, wait a minute. This is the guy that didn't know where Vince McMahon lived. So we've got to put that caveat out there.
We have read several of his stories or seen his posts about stories, and they have typically been correct, although that, of course, is a big miss, and everyone went with it, and then we got the report on everyone going with it. But here's his tweet.
I was the only one to say, it doesn't look like the house I went to. I guess he bought it afterwards, but go ahead.
Cody Rhodes is a free agent working without an AEW contract. Fightful Select has learned. He's the current AEW TNT champion. And then there is a story up for subscribers of theirs. And apparently Cody Rhodes is indeed a free agent right now, working without a contract since the end of 2021.
Right before they put the belt on him, right? When did he win that title back? It was in December.
Ago. Let me check. I'll double check.
So, well, I wonder if he's going to pull a Kenny King on old Tony. That would be interesting. And I've admitted in the past, when I make a mistake, I admit it. I trusted a lying, gum-bumping sack of snake feces one time and put a belt on him because he said, oh, yeah, I'm going to sign this contract. And we went through with it, and he slipped out without signing the contract and never defended that belt once. So I wonder if, what do you think of the forbidden door of Cody Rhodes popping up in the Royal Rumble with the TNT championship belt?
Well, I think there'd be a big lawsuit for the intellectual property violation if that happened, just with the belt.
What about just the undefeated, uncrowned, undethroned TNT champion?
And to answer your question, the match where Cody Rhodes won the TNT championship was taped December 22nd. It aired Christmas. And of course, Sammy Guevara on January 8th became the interim champion due to Cody being out of step with the medical protocol, or AEW following the medical protocol. I'm not exactly sure.
They were supposedly isolating with a family member who had tested positive for COVID. They didn't say that Cody himself was sick. They said that they were isolating with a family member. So, again, this guy is not only a wrestler, but he's one of the executive vice presidents of the company. And his contract is up at the end of the month. So 9 days before that, he's healthy enough to be there in the building and to win the belt, but not to sign a new contract. And then the next time we're supposed to see him, he's isolating. And then the next time we're supposed to see him is coming up, right? In the next week or so, he's advertised to return to television. Wonder if he'll be there.
Well, again, too, him and his wife have other relationships with TNT and Turner Broadcasting. There's a reality show that was just renewed for season 2, although, of course, that could quickly go away. There's also the Go Big Show thing that they keep advertising nonstop. So there's reasons that would tie him to AEW.
I think all those things have already been shot.
That's a good point. Here's a quote. And once again, Fightful Select broke this story, but here's a quote from Sports Illustrated recently. This is from Cody Rhodes. As of now, my future is with AEW. AEW would be very strange without the core members of the Revolution. We all still talk. We all have this admiration for each other. I can't see myself anywhere else, and I'm very optimistic about what the future holds.
He can't see himself anywhere else.
Unless Tony says, I'm not going to give you that raise you want.
Yeah.
Then he can see himself in a lot of other places, I'll tell you.
Oh, my God. I mean, like I said, I made a mistake once, put a belt on a fucking guy because I believed his bullshit. And this wasn't even high-level, big finance, high contract offer bullshit. So whatever Cody's engaging in here sounds very interesting. Wonder when and where we will see him again. Maybe he's holding out for tattoo removal as part of his new contract. He needs to be on that show that they cover up the bad tattoos.
That's a great idea. I'd watch that episode just for the tears. But there is some fantasy world that it would be funny if he did the Rumble and then came and signed his AEW contract the next day. But to the previous topic before the tasteless commercial spot we did, you got on Jon Moxley pretty hard. I don't blame him for him working some indie show. I don't blame a wrestler for having an idea whether it's good or stupid and going to their boss and pitching it. The boss has to say yes or no. And it's the same thing right here with Cody, putting the TV title on him if he's really out of contract. That comes down to Tony Khan, not Cody. This is all about the way Tony Khan is managing things.
I can't argue. But I believe, as I mentioned earlier, if anybody knows where Tony's balls have gone and they can round him up and put him in a coin purse and bring him back, I'm sure he'll pay a reward. But that's, again, and this whole thing boils down to the WWE currently is screaming at the top of their lungs, win this war, beat us, we'll give you everything you need. Our fans hate us. The most devoted and longtime knowledgeable fans that we have left hate our guts. And all our wrestlers hate our guts and are scared to death they're going to get fired. And our shows are boring as shit. Please win this war. And meanwhile, on the other side, I mean, is it in bad taste to use a football analogy, since Tony owns a bad football team too? They're dropping the ball every time that they fucking make an interception. They refuse to goddamn win this thing. And he's going to let everybody in the company and every wrestler in the company do whatever they want to do. And I don't know, there may only be one thing worse than non-wrestling people telling fucking wrestlers what to do, and that would be letting wrestlers do everything they want to do. And we're seeing both here, side by side. It's like a fight to the fucking bottom. Who is going to submerge past you first? Not every great athlete in baseball, football, basketball, whatever, can also be a coach or a manager, whatever the particular sport entails. Not every wrestler, especially not these days, because there have been so few places for them to learn what the fuck this is. Not every wrestler can be a good booker, matchmaker, writer, creative team, whatever the fuck you want.
Well, Jim, let's stay on the topic of talent in AEW. I'm sure you've seen some of it on Twitter. We've received a lot of feedback to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com. Various questions, so I'll ask you one big overarching one. The Briscoes and FTR, how much have you seen, and why isn't this on AEW TV?
Well, I've seen a couple of promos that each team have done, and they've been great. The Briscoes always are. Who would have thought FTR? They've been on national TV for 2 years, but I don't think we've ever seen them talk uninterrupted for a minute and a half straight. It's great because you have, again, two teams that pride themselves on being the best at what they do, and considering their individual styles are. And they can talk like it, especially the Briscoes. And they don't mind fucking laying shit in. And they're not going to fuck around and do trampoline routines. It's going to be a fight if it happens. That's what everybody's interested in, because that's what they don't get to see in wrestling anymore, is people actually have a fucking fight. They get to see plenty of stunt shows where people are mad at furniture and use each other to take it out on the fucking furniture. And they see plenty of trampoline routines where any number of the AEW roster or anybody on the independents does the goddamn floor routine from Nadia Comaneci's record-breaking performance at the Olympics, but you don't get to see a fucking fight. And that's what they would see with two teams like this. And each one wanting to prove that they were the best. The reason why it's not being seen on television, I refer back to Tony Khan has no balls. And he, say what you want about Twinkle Toes, but it doesn't look like he buries the singles competitors to his supposed top guy throne as much as his co-EVPs do in the tag team ranks. And they're just not going to allow Tony to spend his money to bring talent to his company that will get ratings on TV for his program and potentially buys for his pay-per-views, because it will make the Hardley Boys look like Hardley Boys. And they don't want that. So now there's fans demanding it on Twitter. The teams are talking about it. It may very well happen on some outlaw show somewhere. But again, Tony would have to clear that because obviously FTR worked for him, just like Moxley. Well, I wonder why Tony wouldn't clear that. Well, the only reason I can think of is if he clears it and they have the match elsewhere, then so many people are going to talk about it and it's going to get such buzz that people are going to be laughing about why it couldn't have been on AEW or on their pay-per-view on national television. And then Tony will go back to the Hardley Boys and go, what the fuck? You guys are supposed to be the big tag team experts. And they'll go hummina. There's no reason this match shouldn't take place.
He's going to give it away.
I believe he probably will. Because if it does happen, he will say, oh, well, you guys go and wrestle them over there, whatever. But, we've got so many teams here that have all been approved by my EVPs because they either do what they told or they're no threat to them. But you guys would be too good and people would talk about it too much. And then it would pop the bubble on this myth that the Cucamonga Kids got going on. So, but anyway, if it happens anywhere but in AEW, again, Tony, just ball your money up and throw it out the fucking window. Set fire to it. It'll save time.
Considering some of the things I get on TV, it's a real shame none of that has. I saw a promo the other day with FTR after you retweeted it. It was the best Dax Harwood promo I've ever seen. I know he was cursing and you can't hear, the F word on TNT or TBS.
No, they can just say shit, shithead, shitface, and shitty dipshit. They can say all that. Goddamn son of a bitch. But when people that look like children, when they're saying those words, they don't register like when grown men say them. So that's how they get away with it on AEW.
Jim, another story kind of happening in the last couple of days here in the world of professional wrestling concerns Mustafa Ali. Have you been following this?
Well, it didn't take much following. I turned on the Twitter machine and there people were talking about it because he's requested his release. And apparently he wasn't happy with whatever Vince McMahon wanted him to do.
I have something here from Bleacher Report by Tyler Conway. Mustafa Ali publicly requested his release from WWE on Sunday, less than 2 weeks ahead of the Royal Rumble event. In a tweet, it simply said, I am requesting my release from WWE, and then there was a statement. I have a message that is much bigger than my dreams in pro wrestling. Despite my best efforts, I will not be able to deliver this message while working with WWE. Therefore, I am requesting my release from WWE. He's 35 years old. I'm trying to skim through the rest of this article. He was, of course, in the, as it says here, the failed Retribution stable, which bludgeoned the momentum of every member. Ali, Dominic Dijakovic, Dio Madden, Mercedes Martinez, and Mia Yim are all highly touted wrestlers who were thrown into gimmicks that never got off the ground. Ali was the only member of the group to not undergo a name change. And he is no longer there. What do you think of Again, another wrestler.
Well, no, did we hear he's granted the release? He's asked for it.
Well, we've heard he's asked for it. Another wrestler asking for a release.
Yeah, well, you say he's no longer there. I don't know if they're going to let him go or not.
Excuse me.
Because here's the thing, then does that sets a precedent? It's okay for them to fire you if they want you gone, but if you want to leave, unless they really just don't give a shit about you, I don't see why they would release you, because then if they release you just because you asked for it, then wouldn't that open them up to about another 25 or 30 requests? And then where do you draw the line? That's why they've never liked to grant releases when the talent requests them, unless they're just, oh, thank God, he finally did. Yeah, before he changes his mind quick. But otherwise, I don't know whether they're going to let him go because he did it so publicly. Maybe he thinks that'll help his case, that people will be behind him as the underdog or whatever.
Well, do you think it helps his case, just the general mindset of the company right now, where they're laying off wrestlers and personnel left and right every month, every 2 months, you're hearing about another batch of people let go?
Well, like I said, if they feel like that he's so far down on the totem pole and they don't care, sure. But if in any way they think that will set a precedent to have other people ask that they don't want to release or don't want to have that conversation with, then they might just, oh, we're going to have something for you soon, pal. Or, well, we'll give you a 1-year non-compete or whatever. Who knows what the fuck. And then, honestly, the way he delivered, I have a message that I want to deliver. What? That sounded a little grandiose. I don't know this fellow. I've never met him. I'm wondering if he's bought the idea that he's a worldwide superstar and major entertainer. But I remember the line. I have a song I want to sing. I don't know what overcame Paul Jones one day at Atlanta TV, except that was the time that I don't think Paulie was in yet, but some of the guys were starting to do little fucking sharp shoot shots at each other in interviews or in promos. I had done one where I said, if things don't, when we were in renegotiations with Crockett, said if the competition doesn't get any better around here, we might have to pack up and head south or east or west or even north. And then Bobby and Stan both looked up and went north to find some competition around here. And nobody knew, right? The fans. And Flair and those guys were sniping at each other. And Paul Jones came out and tried to do a shoot interview with two meanings, one that the regular fans would get and one that the smart fans would get. And he had built some fucking thing up where he had a song in his heart that he needed to get out. And he said, I've got a song and I want to sing it. Nobody, neither side, neither the fans that weren't smart nor the ones that were understood what he was trying to say. But I hope Muhammad Ali, or what's his name?
Mustafa Ali.
Yeah, I hope he finds a place to deliver his message. Maybe I hear the U.S. Postal Service is shorthanded. He could deliver everybody's message.
If I could ask you a little bit about those promos in the TBS days, when I thought they really started getting sharp was after the UWF purchase. Was there heat in the studio between, not heavy heat, but was there issues between the UWF camp, like an Eddie Gilbert and those guys, Terry Taylor, with some of the guys that were there, Ric Flair and various other guys?
Well, there wasn't with Terry Taylor, just UWF versus NWA. Terry had worked for Crockett before, and he was happy to be back because the houses at the end of the UWF were not all that brilliant. Eddie Gilbert, yes, was. I mean, he didn't. Well, no, he didn't show it, but no, he wanted to, and rightfully so. Watts had a lot of confidence in him, had let him book some. He wanted that territory to continue. And he wanted to be the booker. And at first, Dusty had, had faith in him, and he had been there and was letting him do some stuff, as I recall. But then, the whole thing got submerged into Crockett Promotions. So I'm sure Eddie was just livid because, I identified with a lot of him. He'd rather people leave him alone with his fucking product and it come out like he wanted, but at the same time, he did let things, eat at him and dwell within him, whereas I would blow up and then get over it. Whereas Eddie never really blew up. He just, every once in a while, you'd turn around and he was gone. But it would fester for a while with him.
You've never been paranoid. And unfortunately, Eddie was a paranoid guy.
He did have an element. I'm not paranoid. It's just that everybody is out to get me.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, he did have I wasn't paranoid in that I wasn't taking shit, the shit that he took personally. He took a lot of stuff personally. It was just an affront to him, and he would stew on it and fret about it. But then again, but being in the Memphis territory, he's the one that booked me when I left WCW, me and Stan and Steve to come in and turn heel on Lawler and work with Lawler and Dundee and Jeff Jarrett, because Eddie was the booker in Memphis at the start. And I ran a program by him that, he liked. It was about 12 weeks or whatever. And we agreed on everything. And we came in the first week and did the first match. And then a couple days later, Jerry Jarrett, we were still living in Charlotte, me and Stan were. Jerry Jarrett calls me in Charlotte and says, well, what is the program that you and Eddie had started? I was like, what? Well, Eddie's no longer with us. What? He was just the booker Monday night. Well, he had gotten mad about something and left. So I told the whole thing to Jerry, who liked it. It involved bringing Fargo in and blah, blah, blah. And I've told this story before in conjunction with, that's when the Gulf War happened, Desert Storm, whatever, 1991, and was knocking us all off television. But anyway, I told Jerry the deal, the angle. He said, okay. And I wrote it down and handed it to him the next week. And he said, well, we'll go with this. And we did for about the first, I think, 6 or 8 weeks. Like I said, TV was knocked off, the war coverage. The towns came up, but they didn't come up as much as we wanted. So then the last night we were going to do a swerve with bringing Fargo in and then do something that would prolong it another 3 weeks or whatever. But Jerry said, well, I can't afford to pay you guys guarantees anymore, because I swear to God, me and Stan had agreed to do it for $300 a night. And we had to go in on Friday nights for TV on Saturday. And then we'd do Nashville on Saturday night, be off on Sunday, do Memphis on Monday, Louisville on Tuesday, and get home Charlotte on Wednesday morning. So we were only home 2 days a week to work 4 times that we were getting paid for. So, what the fuck? But he couldn't, at that time, he couldn't afford the $300, he said. So we agreed to finish up the program. And bear in mind, we were only there 6 or 7 weeks. So the first week, Eddie was the booker. Then Jerry calls and says, well, he's quit. He's mad. And there was big heat, whatever, him and Lawler. And we do 6 weeks of a program, and we do the blow-off match in the Coliseum in Memphis with Fargo involved. And as we come with Lawler and Jeff Jarrett, and as we come back, me and Stan and Steve, we see Eddie in street clothes running in to attack Jerry Lawler so they can film it and show it on TV Saturday. And Eddie's back after 6 weeks. I'm like, what the fuck? And they went right back to the fucking main event that they had the week before we came in, which was Jerry Lawler versus Eddie Gilbert. Only this time we'd got the house back up to like 12 or 14 grand, and it dropped back to 5, which is where they were when we started the whole thing.
You knew that things weren't what they once were. I mean, everything was really different. Obviously, there's no Lance Russell. But were you surprised when you went back to Memphis in 91, the state of things, or were you expecting exactly what it was?
A little bit of both. I knew business was down, and we actually, I don't even think we ever made Evansville at all on that run with the Fabs. We just really did Nashville, Memphis, and Louisville. Louisville at that point still looked a little bit more like the old days, and Louisville had dropped to where the houses were half or a third of what they had been in the glory days when I first got started in business. Memphis had dropped to where they were a fourth or a fifth. So that was the biggest shock. Louisville held up pretty well and actually did till the end of the whole Memphis territory. And Nashville was going to be what Nashville was, anywhere from, 800 to 1,200 people on a Saturday night if the Fabulous Ones or Jackie Fargo was involved. But it didn't, when we started, when we went in, it was fairly brutal, but it got to about half of what it used to be. But Memphis was badly hurt at that point.
Were there big differences in the fans in Memphis, Louisville, and Nashville? Just the type of fans that were attending the shows?
Oh, yeah. I could tell, but probably to the untrained eye or somebody who'd never been in territory before, it'd be a subtle difference. If you were from New York, well, they're all a bunch of Southern hillbillies, whatever. But honestly, Nashville, that was the roughest crowd. The fairgrounds was not in a great neighborhood. And it was the rougher crowd, and it was the smaller building, and they could get to you easier. And if you were going to have any issues at that point, it'd probably still be in Nashville. Louisville was really the same kind of cross section of people that had always been. You had weirdos, you had responsible people, you had professional people, and you had unemployed people. You had the whole spectrum. You just didn't have as many of them of each type as you had back in the day. And then Memphis was probably, of the three cities, that's where you had the biggest African-American attendance. And that's where you had not only the people from, when they moved from the Ellis Auditorium in Memphis to the Mid-South Coliseum in the early 70s, they thought it might hurt because the people from the inner city didn't have transportation. They could walk to the Ellis Auditorium or maybe take, a short little bus ride or whatever. But to get out to the Coliseum, they thought that they would probably run off a lot of the, not run off, but just lose a lot of the black audience. But they got there. They stayed and supported wrestling. And then you had, a cross section of other people, everybody from, we've talked about who was wrestling fans in Memphis. Everybody from Sam Phillips's sons to, the bank presidents. They might not go to the Coliseum every Monday night, but they'd watch TV and you'd see somebody every once in a while that was somebody around Memphis. So they were different crowds, but still they were all over the place. Men and women, old, young, babies, elderly people, whatever.
You know what I think I have in the Wrestling News Archive? The signed permission slip from Sam Phillips' son and his friend to run the Sputnik Monroe fan club.
Oh my God. If you do, that's a prized piece of Memphis memorabilia.
I mean, that's how popular Sputnik was. Sam Phillips' kid's like, I'm going to start a fan club for him and dye my hair.
It was, because I'm trying to think, was it Knox or was it the other son's name was Jerry, I think. He's the one that Sputnik made the world's
midget champion.
The world's midget champion when he was 12 years old, because Sputnik had the kid working on spot shows where the kid would go to the ring with a cigar in his mouth and they'd announce him as the world's greatest or world something midget wrestler. And the people would get hot because they could tell it was a kid with a cigar and what the fuck. And Sputnik had so much heat and ended up, Sam Phillips had to put the kibosh on it because they were afraid the kid was 12. He was going to get knifed. But Knox or Jerry, one or the other, also, they had the Sputnik Monroe bleached, dyed white spot in the front of their hair during one of their high school yearbook photos, which in 1959, 1960, if you go back and look at Memphis high school yearbook pictures, some of the fucking guys had the Sputnik spot in the front of their head bleached. It was a goddamn mania.
Speaking of mania, some people are filled with manic energy and they need to exercise and they want to do it in the comfort of their own home.
Well, I don't know how you got to Des Moines from Poughkeepsie, but nevertheless, we will continue with it. Folks, if you have a New Year's resolution, you want to get in shape, you want to be healthier, but you don't have time to get to the gym, or you don't want to go to a gym out in public and have people sweating and breathing their pathogens on you, well, right now, you can fulfill your New Year's resolution to reach your fitness goal and do it, as Brian so eloquently said, in the privacy of your own home with our friends at Echelon. Echelon is the affordable way to get the workout equipment, the workout community, and an instructor's motivation right in the comfort and privacy of your own home. Now, once again, the instructor's whip does not feel the same over the virtual consultation as it does in person. You won't get marks and welts, but still he's going to drive you to succeed. Folks,
it is a
Echelon.
figurative whip. It is a figurative whip.
Cool whip. Echelon Fitness's fitness app provides you thousands of live and on-demand classes with great music from your favorite artists like Pitbull and Old Dominion. I thought that was a college. But anyway, if your Pitbull likes to howl along with your favorite music while you work out, whatever the case, I don't know where they're going there. With Echelon Fitness, you can work out anytime, day or night, and crush your fitness goals. You can pick your class. You can climb that tall, sharp, steep leaderboard. Use the grappling hooks and the ropes that are supplied with the equipment. Cheer each other on, give it your all, because Echelon Fitness's world-class fitness instructors are supportive, engaging, and fun. They really know how to get you moving. Sometimes they'll set your shoes on fire. Echelon Fitness's full range of affordable workout equipment, including stationary bikes, smart rowers, sleek fitness screens, and the ever-popular but apparently not dangerous auto-folding treadmill.
Not dangerous.
It's not dangerous. You just sit back and watch this thing fold and unfold all on its own. It's a miracle to behold. Pop some popcorn. Gather the whole family around it. But all of these pieces of equipment are connected. How are they connected? Not with chains or ropes, but they're connected to the Echelon Fitness experience. And they offer around-the-clock classes for the family, including full-body workout programs that'll keep you coming back. You wouldn't believe all the places on your body that they will work out. And one membership covers a family of 5, so if you don't have but one kid, you're going to have to get busy. But if you're in better shape, you ought to be able to produce a couple pretty soon. And right now, for a limited time only, podcast listeners of mine, not yours, Brian, but mine, get up to $650 off the MSRP and also off the price of these items. To get this exclusive podcast discount, you got to text the word DRIVE, DRIVE, to 818181. OU 812? No, not that, but instead 818181. That's what I say every time I come out of a Wendy's. 818181. That's the number to text DRIVE to get. What do you get? I don't fucking know. Hold on. 600 up to, all the way through and up to $650 off the price of some of this fine workout equipment that will keep your body functioning just like a Swiss watch. It will start ticking, and you won't know where it'll come from. Message and data rates may apply. See terms for details. Where can you see these terms? I don't know. That's in the details.
All right, well, let's get some more details to these questions. Answers to these questions right here on this dumb show here today. Jim, this next one was sent to... Hey, what was that?
That's I don't know.
This next one was... This next one was sent to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com from Logan Landers.
Logan Landers.
That is correct. It's quite the name.
It sounds somewhat phony, but go ahead.
Current Ring of Honor World Champion Jonathan Gresham is beginning a new promotion called Terminus. The rules have been announced for his first show and was wanting to hear what Jim has to say about them. And I have the rules here. Have you seen this?
I didn't get a chance to peruse it in detail, so this will be an opportunity to do that. But now he's the interim champion, right? Because the reigning champion was unable to defend his title on their final battle because he had COVID. So his name is Bandito, and apparently he's made off with the Bandito, made off with the belt. But Jonathan Gresham is the interim champion, so they're going to have to settle this issue at some point.
Well, here are the Terminus directives for immediate release.
And by the way, Terminus. Do you know what Terminus means?
I'm not sure.
According to the American Heritage Dictionary 3rd edition, Terminus means the final point, the end. So they've started a new promotion. Terminus.
All matches must be won by pin, submission, KO, or DQ unless substitute stipulation agreed upon by grapplers. Time limits.
Okay, wait. How else would you win? They didn't mention count out.
They didn't mention count out.
Okay. You can be disqualified. You can be pinned. You can submit. You can get knocked out. In what other wrestling? I'm not trying to even take the piss out of this fellow, but besides a count out, what other way can you be defeated in a wrestling match to begin with?
I think adding the KO may be part of it too. Because you don't see too many wrestling matches end with a referee just calling it because one guy's knocked out. You see that in boxing. You see that in MMA. You never see that in wrestling.
Well, there's a reason, because it's harder to throw a knockout punch and make it look good. But anyway, I'm just picking at nits. Go ahead.
Time limits, strictly enforced. Singles, 15. Tag or multi-man, 15. Championship bouts, 20.
Well, we complain that all matches now have to go longer than the goddamn, director's cut of intolerance, as I refer to often. So that would speed things up. Might be a little short for a championship match if you had two guys that could really go, but nevertheless.
Overtime. A 90-second overtime period occurs if there is no winner after the time limit expires. Grapplers will start OT period in a neutral position. If there is no decision when OT expires, the result is a draw.
But 90 seconds.
A 90-second overtime period occurs if there's no winner.
That's not long.
From a neutral position.
From a neutral position. Well, wait a minute. But now, okay, here's the thing. And I understand they're going for like the Ring of Honor pure wrestling title rules, or some of the stuff that Gabe did in Evolve, where it's, and I'm sure they don't have any grandiose thoughts that this is going to take over the WWE's audience. This is a niche promotion for fans who like the technical grappling style, I would assume. But you're getting bogged down in details, and it's and you're going to find that also if you do an overtime, what if you've done a goddamn match where the match is over with, the time is up, and some guy's fucking laying there on the mat and the other guy's fucking fresh and has been kicking the shit out of him? Yeah, you're going to start in a neutral position. The guy's still going to be laying there and the other guy's still going to be standing up. It's maybe harder to do some of these things in execution than when they're just sitting around thinking of rules. And if you go too deep with rules and stipulations and etc., you lose people because they don't get it all. I'm all in favor of rules in wrestling because all sports have rules, and the rules that have been involved with wrestling for 50 and 100 years are still valid and good, and also simple to understand if the promotions would bother to actually educate their fans what the rules are. But we don't need to get real fancy and reinventing the wheel, because it gets convoluted and people don't understand or instantly in their mind see what the fuck is going on. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, throughout the years you would see various rules, especially NWA rules in magazines or programs. Did any promotion ever put out a rule book?
I have one, which was from the Calgary Boxing and Wrestling Commission.
I have one of those, yes.
Yes.
But that wasn't put out by the promotion.
But that wasn't put out by the promotion. But the promotions technically would, in terms of when they printed the rules in their program, but the rules weren't long enough for a book. That's what made wrestling rules great. They were simple, they were easy to understand, and they weren't counterintuitive, as they say. They made sense. Everything made perfect sense. It was easy to articulate, easy to explain. And some territories differed. It was an automatic DQ in the AWA to throw a guy headfirst into the steel ring post. Down south, that happened a lot because guys needed creative ways to get juice. Some places, coming off the top rope was a disqualification. You could do a knee drop or an elbow drop or whatever off the second rope, but not the top rope. That was considered too dangerous. And they would illustrate that by, if somebody was good off the top rope, like a Ray Stevens, they'd have him come off the top on a guy and they'd carry him out on a stretcher. And that way, that was something for heels to do behind the referee's back. And in the Memphis territory, jumping off the top rope and making contact with somebody, you could miss, didn't matter. But making contact was an automatic disqualification. Every heel tag team did the same thing behind the referee's back. When the referee's putting one babyface out, one of the heels holds the other babyface, and the other heel comes off the top rope with just a double sledge or whatever, and the people were ready to crawl over the fucking rail because it was illegal and it was dangerous. But whether there were slight rule changes or not, throwing a guy over the top rope, I don't think that was a DQ in the AWA, but it was in most territories down south. It was not in the WWF. But it made sense that you can throw a guy out of the ring, but if you throw him over the top rope because of the fall to the concrete floor, that cannot be tolerated. So that way, that was a way to get heat on the babyface behind the referee's back, is top rope him. Or that was a way to get out of a match when you couldn't switch belts. Babyface is cooking, fucking dump him over the top, get disqualified, get the fuck out of there. But it was simple to understand, and everybody automatically knew it. They didn't have to have the announcer explain it to them. They didn't have to have the ring announcer announce the reason for the disqualification. They saw it. Foreign object, whatever. When's the last time somebody used a legitimate, real object that you would use as a foreign object in a goddamn wrestling match instead of the furniture or spikes or whatever the fuck?
Kendo stick.
Kendo stick. That would never be used for anything. But that's the thing, is wrestling rules, simple, easy to understand, and even if they changed slightly from territory to territory, they always made sense. That's why the fans understood it.
Disqualification criteria: 2 technical fouls, foreign object usage, and outside interference. And I have a list here of the technical fouls. Remember, 2 of them equal a disqualification.
Okay.
Throwing opponent over top rope.
Okay.
10-second top rope count. 5-count rope or corner break. Intentional physical contact with referee. Intentional low blow. Intentional eye gouge. Fish hooking. Intentional hair pulling. Spitting. Closed fist punches to face. Technical fouls given at referee's discretion.
Well, and again, those are all things that were against the rules in wrestling. Can't pull hair, you can't pull the tights, can't gouge the eyes, can't hit the referee, can't use foreign object. They're articulating it, which is a positive, but, and I'm not going to blister them about their tweaks, except that they're expecting the fans to, you can do any one of those things and not get disqualified, right? But if you do 2 of them, you're going to get disqualified. Are the people going to remember? Is it going to have the same impact on them when they see somebody do one of those things, because they know, well, they can still do another one before they get disqualified? But they're not reinventing the wheel here. They're trying to go with it.
In a sense, it's kind of a mission statement more than a rule set.
Yeah, they're trying to say, okay, and this is probably, and I've seen Jonathan Gresham a few times, and he's a very technical guy, and all promoters promote the style of wrestling that they are most well versed in, he's probably wanting to go for the crowd that likes technical wrestling, submission wrestling, etc. They don't want any gaga as opposed to too much gaga. See, we can't ever get the right porridge these days. It's either all the way gaga or all no gaga. We can't just get the little gaga in the middle and still keep it serious, because that's what brings in most of the people. We have to either be at one extreme or the other. So it looks like they're trying to go for the dedicated fans that like scientific technical wrestling with no gaga, and they'll probably do it well. Will it be the answer to everybody's problems? Probably not.
The final thing here, countouts. 5 seconds. And any weapon usage...
5 seconds?
It says 5 seconds.
Is that 5 seconds, or is that Ref Aubrey counting to 5, which takes an hour and a half?
That's a good question. Any weapon usage will result in immediate disqualification and expulsion from Terminus.
Well, there you go. They're not going to be permitting any of that wild, crazy stuff.
You know, I like the idea of them putting out a statement like this, because it just kind of says we're trying to do something a little different than what other people are doing.
Yeah, and straightening it up. And I still think you need to have, in some respects, well, definitely, in a lot of respects, in wrestling, you need to have the wild shit. You need to have believable wild shit. You need to have two guys or two teams or two entities, whatever, factions, that you believe really hate each other, and they need to be allowed to go too far. But everybody can't be allowed to go too far, then there is no too far. So we need believable wild bullshit in wrestling. That's what really sells the tickets. But it's gone too far, so at least they're saying, okay, we're going to rein this all back. And then maybe at some point as their shows progress, somebody will come in that's the antithesis of everything that they stand for, and that person will get over, because it'll be completely different. But, I mean, you know, I did try to do the same thing with when Sinclair first started airing Ring of Honor. We tried to differentiate ourselves from the other products somewhat, and also acknowledge their existence, by having guys like Charlie Haas and Shelton Benjamin say, yeah, you know, we excelled in amateur wrestling, you know, in school, Shelton in Minnesota, me at Seton Hall, and blah, blah, blah. These were our amateur credentials. Then we spent quite some time and excelled in entertainment wrestling. But now we've come back to what our first love was, which is competition. So subtly you get in people's mind, you have to acknowledge that most wrestling looks like bullshit these days. And that, yeah, the WWF is fake, but we'll acknowledge it. It's entertainment wrestling. But these guys are real, and what we do is not. So this is another way of trying to differentiate from just all the silly, goofy backyard outlaw wrestling they see.
Well, when it comes to rules, you better follow the rules. Otherwise, there's one man who may be coming after you. Perhaps you're taking advantage of the little guy. Perhaps you're a big corporation poisoning society. There's only one man to call, Jim.
And what is he called? I'll tell you exactly what he's called. This is his name.
Call Stephen P. News. If you need to sue. An outlaw mud show or two. Still to the rest.
Yes, folks, no matter what your issue, even if you have a co-host who is so burnt, fried, and frazzled and dicked by the dangle dong of destiny that he can't even put together a cogent simile or a smooth transition, no matter what your issue is, ladies and gentlemen, The man, the myth, the legend, Stephen P. New at newlawoffice.com, 888-692-8084. He can get you out of it, or he can put somebody else in it. If somebody has messed with you, Stephen P. New will slap them naked and hide their clothes. I'll guarantee you. He'll get even for you.
Don't guarantee that. No, you can't guarantee that.
Well, I've seen him do it. Holy mackerel. This one guy, he slapped him about the head and face a couple times. The guy was arrested for WRAF, walking recklessly and attempting to fall. Anyway, however, even though that Stephen P. New is the consigliere of the cult of Cornette, a favorite of all the wrestling fans because he's one of us, and also someone who still to this day people around the world are discovering is a real individual and not someone that we have invented. However, right now, Stephen, as we mentioned, I think last week on the program, is doing important work because right now the team at New Law Office is filing the initial cases in New York, West Virginia, Ohio, Kentucky, and Tennessee on behalf of hundreds of thousands of kids that were born addicted to opioids, as the pharmaceutical industry led the FDA, the doctors, and the patients to believe that opioids could be safely taken during pregnancy. And for a 10-year period between 2005 and 2015, between 10 and 40% of expectant mothers were prescribed at least one opioid prescription. I'm 60 years old and I have a lot of bad body parts, and I have not been prescribed opioids since my last surgery, and that was a one-time deal. So there's a lot of fault going around here. But anyway, millions of babies suffered from neonatal opioid withdrawal syndrome, and they could be affected for life. And the New Law Office team is filing these cases right now. And one of the sticking points, not the sticking point, but the difficulties is if the kids are living with their parents, then that's an easy chain of custody, and you can find out what was prescribed the mother and et cetera. Everybody's right there. But there's grandparents raising their grandchildren because the parents are not in the picture, or adoptive and foster parents that may not be filled in on all of the medical backgrounds of the parents or know how to contact an attorney like Stephen. So if you know grandparents raising grandkids, adoptive or foster parents, where the kids had problems with the neonatal opioid withdrawal syndrome, newlawoffice.com, 888-692-8084. They want to include you because a lot of people are going to be involved in this because the problem was widespread. So get in now if you know somebody that fits this profile. Right, Brian?
That's right. Well, Jim, let's get a few more questions before we wrap things up. And I want to ask you one about some news happening right now as we are recording. And I'm wondering if you think this is going to be something that we're going to see more of. But AEW has put out a tweet. The entry requirements for this week's Dynamite and Rampage events in Washington, D.C. Here's the press release. Entry requirements. AEW presents Dynamite and Rampage, the entertainment and sports arena, Wednesday, January 19th and Friday, January 21st, 2022. Attention.
What city is this in?
Washington, D.C.
Washington. Okay. Our nation's capital.
Attention. Per the Executive Office of the Mayor and D.C. Department of Health, the District of Columbia will adopt a citywide vaccination entry requirement that requires COVID-19 vaccination verification to enter indoor facilities within the city. All fans ages 12 and up entering the entertainment and sports arena will be required to show proof of COVID vaccination along with a photo ID for ages 18 and up to match. Masks are also required for all patrons. So we haven't seen that. We've been seeing a lot of wrestling. We don't know about any requirements about proving vaccination, but we've certainly seen plenty of people without masks, not wearing masks. What do you think of the idea of running a city like DC? There's going to be a requirement for that.
We're in a fucking worldwide pandemic. There should have been all along, everywhere. It's not that fucking big a goddamn deal. Get your vaccination. It won't keep you from getting COVID, but it'll probably keep you from getting majorly sick or dying or being hospitalized and being a burden on an already overburdened healthcare system that in this country we have a shit one. The healthcare is great if you can afford it. It's the people who did, well, are we going to have a booster every year? Like the flu shot? Yeah, maybe. And then people are going, well, how many shots are we supposed to take? Well, maybe 1 or 2 a year. You fucking cowards, you gutless bastards. What the fuck? Especially all of the militia types and the overthrow the government types and the Civil War types, the type we're going to fight for our rights. They're scared to take a fucking shot, but they're going to take an automatic assault rifle out and go to war. Sure, they're going to run like scalded dogs. If you can't take, and the needle's not even that big. I don't like shots. You know what? How about this? Instead of taking your little needle, little fucking vaccination booster shot, have somebody stick a needle about 3 inches long in between the bones of your knee and drain about 150 cc's of blood out of that son of a bitch. I didn't like that, but I did it. You know why? Because I couldn't walk. Fucking morons. So yes, while we are in a contagious pandemic, you should be vaccinated to go out in public with other people, and you should have the common courtesy to wear a mask so you don't spit on people and give them something. It's the mask is not as uncomfortable to me as a seatbelt. And the fucking needle they gave me the booster shot with wasn't as big as the one I got a flu shot with. And I think everybody's been vaccinating their children against a variety of diseases for years now. And there's also those pesky safety requirements that the government puts in on everything that could be dangerous. So, what the fuck? Yeah, it'd be better if we didn't have the whole thing, but since we do the smart thing, not the stupid thing. I know that's the thing that the anti-science, anti-logic, anti-common sense, anti-truth, anti-facts, anti-media, anti-smart people group likes to do. But unlike stupid people, I believe doctors instead of Facebook, and I believe major media conglomerates instead of somebody's drunk uncle. And I do what I'm supposed to do so that I don't get shit that'll kill me. What the fuck? It's not that complicated. Bravo, Washington, D.C.
Do you think an effective campaign would be, don't be like Hulk Hogan?
Well, he's immortal. He doesn't count.
I guess so.
As you said so eloquently. It's fucking ridiculous. Wear a goddamn mask, get a shot, and go on about your business.
Well, speaking about going about your business, Jim, our next question sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Pete in Providence, Rhode Island. I recently watched a match between Bobby Heenan and the great Salvatore Bellomo from 1984. Bobby was wearing his black Andre the Giant type singlet, and they proceeded to put on a very entertaining match. Before the match, Sir Alfred Hayes, Lord Alfred Hayes, I believe, mentioned that Bobby had started his career right at the bottom rung of professional wrestling in those smaller halls around the country. And Gorilla Monsoon talked about how he brings interesting and exceptional credentials into the ring. I've heard stories as to how Bobby got started as a wrestler and eventually became a manager. I have also heard that he started as a manager and sprinkled in wrestling matches while he continued to manage. As I know Jim admired Bobby Heenan, I was hoping he'd give a little background on how the Brain's career began. Did it start as a manager, or did it start as a wrestler?
Both. Because I'll try to explain this. Bobby Heenan he was living in Indianapolis, going to the wrestling matches, like a lot of kids, and because he didn't have a lot of money, like a lot of kids, Bobby Eaton did the same thing. in Huntsville. He would hang around and try to get a spot helping set up the ring or carrying stuff in or doing whatever and getting the matches that way. And Jimmy Hart did the same thing in Memphis when he was a kid. He'd go in and sell programs to get in. But anyway, Bobby hung around the matches as we were all described at one time or another in our lives. We were classic hangers-on. And finally, Bruiser took notice of him, and he was only in 1965, I think, 20, 21 years old or whatever, and kind of a baby-faced kid. But it graduated to where he was washing Bruiser's car, and he was doing errands for Bruiser and whatever. And finally, they told him, go to the wrestling office on such and such day at such and such time. So he's there, and he's waiting to go in, and some of the fans were hanging around, and they were like, can we have your autograph? And he didn't know what to sign because he didn't know what his name was. And he didn't know who he was or what the fuck he was going to do. So his name was Raymond, his real first name, but they named him Bobby after Bobby Davis, who was at that point in time in the mid-'60s, especially in the Midwest, the name that anybody, any fan or anybody in the wrestling business alike, if you thought of a manager, you thought of gentleman Bobby Davis. So he became Bobby Heenan. And his first booking, they had a tag team in Indianapolis at the time. It was working for Bruiser and Snyder, the Assassins, but it wasn't Tom Renesto and Jody Hamilton. It was alternate Assassins who were Guy Mitchell and Joe Tommaso. And so Bobby was going to be the manager of the Assassins. But apparently his first booking was in Louisville, Kentucky at the Gardens, then known as the Convention Center, because that's when 1965 Bruiser had just started running Indianapolis. Barnett had just left for Australia, and Louisville was about to go dark because there'd been a few years where the cards in Louisville were lackluster and small, and the crowds weren't great, and Bruiser had ended up giving up the town, as we've covered many times, and it would be dark until Jerry Jarrett opened it up in 1970. But on this particular night, Bobby is booked to manage the Assassins in a tag team match. Well, when they get there, one of the Assassins doesn't show up. He's hurt or he's sick or whatever happened. And I don't know that Bobby told me the story. I don't know he ever told me specifically which one didn't show up, but they told Bobby, they said, just put the fucking outfit on, because they wore bodysuits and a mask. Nobody knew what they looked like anyway, right? And Louisville wasn't a big enough town, wasn't being run very often, that really they cared, right? So Bobby had not only never managed, he'd never had a wrestling match either. And they told him, just put the outfit on and stand on the fucking apron, and the assassin will do most of the work, but just take a cheap shot every now and then to make it look good. Well, fuck. Apparently they made it look so good that Bobby said he had a fan trying to pull him off the apron of the ring and his first night, and the cops come in. And apparently that also was the same night, because we've since found, thanks to John Cosper's research, an article in the Louisville Courier-Journal where Johnny Valentine was arrested for public drunkenness or drunkenness and disorderly conduct. They're in the locker room, and Wee Willie Davis, who was 6'9", 300-something pounds, former wrestler in the 40s, had been in, he was one of the tug-of-war wrestlers in the movie Mighty Joe Young. Well, he had retired to Louisville and become a sheriff's deputy. And he's in the locker room that night, and Bobby didn't know what the fuck. He's just minding his own business in the corner. But Johnny Valentine and Wee Willie Davis get in a goddamn fight. And Johnny Valentine, suppose, is going in his bag to get his gun, and Wee Willie Davis has a slapjack and is whacking Valentine over the head with it. And apparently there was an article in the Louisville Courier-Journal that Valentine was arrested after a match for, as I said, public drunkenness and whatever the fuck. And apparently that was emanated from that event. So anyway, so Bobby's been attacked by a fan. He's seen guys in a locker room almost kill each other. Then they get back in the car to go back to Indianapolis, and they're going across the bridge across the Ohio River, and there's a wreck on the bridge. And Bobby said there's a car on fire, and a guy comes running past their car, and his clothes are on fire. And they drive 100 miles back to Indianapolis. They get in like 3 o'clock in the morning. He opens up his payoff envelope. He got $20. And his reaction was like, when can I do this again? And that's how he got started in the wrestling business. And it's probably not even the weirdest debut story. But so he started to be a manager, but in his very first event, he got thrown into wrestling, even though he didn't know how at that point. And then later on, once again, there was no school. He did the same thing that I did, although a lot better. Trial and error. He learned everything that he learned how to do in the ring from doing it in the ring in front of people, or taking it, as the case may be, until he got good at it. And then by the 70s, except for Ray Stevens and Nick Bockwinkel, Bobby Heenan was a better wrestler than the guys that he managed. By 1984, he already had the bad neck. He'd hurt it in Japan. That was before Warrior would hurt it worse. And he was winding his in-ring career down because he was 40 at that point, and had never been an athlete that trained a lot. He was just a natural. I mean, you've seen the deal where he would run around the ring in circles and then dive over the top rope to get away from the baby face, and all the wild bumps and the buckle and the bumps off the punches and the juice he got and everything. He'd learned how to do that like everybody did at that point on the fly. But I've never seen the match with Sal Bellomo. I would assume it's probably not indicative of Bobby's best work at that time of his life and in that environment. But in the 70s, that's one of the reasons why Bruiser was as over as he was because he had years of being able to kick the shit out of Bobby Heenan.
And one of the reasons Bobby Heenan hated Dick the Bruiser till his death was because Dick the Bruiser had years of kicking the shit out of Bobby Heenan in front of the camera, in front of the fans, and behind the scenes as well.
Yeah, the private mentally kicking the shit out of him was worse than the public physically kicking the shit out of him. But then when he said adios, he made it. It had to be a great kind of gotcha, because at one point I would venture, as Bruiser's territory went downhill in the late 70s and Bobby was on top of those big houses for Vern, Bobby Heenan was making more money than Dick the Bruiser. And that would have been unheard of 10 years previously just because of their different status in the community.
Did he hate Dick the Bruiser more than anyone else in wrestling?
Well, I can't even. If I was to sit here right now with Bobby and say, "Do you hate him?" I hate that motherfucker. I don't know whether he'd say that or not. He was not fond of Bruiser and or the way that he treated him and some other people. But there was a couple of other people that Bobby was not fond of because of the way that they had conducted themselves in the business, not just toward him, but toward other people. But I don't want to tell tales out of school.
Our next question, Jim, sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Jose McGuire. And that's a fake name if I've ever heard one.
Now, wait a minute. That Mexican Irishman.
Well, Jose Canseco and Mark McGuire. But here's the question. Perhaps Jim explained it the first time he proclaimed Pockets, Chuck, and Trent the Puddin' Gang, but each week I am confused by his reference. I Googled it, I got pudding recipes, and a few old-timey ads for pudding by the kids from our gang, aka the Little Rascals. So is Jim referring to the gang that consisted of Spanky, Alfalfa, and Froggy? Or a totally different gang? Was the pudding gang so obscure that even modern search technologies can't unearth any evidence of it?
Well, I used to call them the, what did I start calling them? I can't even remember what their first name was. And then it just sort of evolved and morphed. But it seemed like as I was describing them one day, when they all were walking down to the ring, and Taylor is the most obvious one, old Muffin Top Taylor, but they just all looked like bowls of pudding. And or it just seemed like something that I would say, well, here comes the pudding gang. Let's sit down and have a bowl of vanilla pudding and watch cartoons, kids. They're just silliness. Unshapely, unsightly silliness. So I went with pudding gang. A gang of pudding heads.
So you are indeed the inventor of pudding gang. I didn't know that. I actually thought it was like some peanut gallery on some local Louisville kids show in the 60s or something.
No, Jim Cornette invented it. Pudding gang. Trademark.
All right, our next question, Jim, sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Jason. A follow-up to a previous question recently. Why did Hulk Hogan wrestle like a heel, even as a babyface? He used weapons, illegal moves, back rakes. Seeing him wrestle, it always perplexed me. Did you ever notice or talk to him?
Okay, that was an abrupt ending. No, Anna, and actually, the longest conversation I ever had with Hulk Hogan was when he was in the Memphis territory in 1979. I was a photographer. And I think he was at the NAPTI convention in 1990 when I was down there, 91, when Pedicino asked me to go down there. And I said, we may have said hello, and otherwise, I've never been around a motherfucker in my life. We've always been in different places at different times. However, this came up also on Twitter, and other people were talking about it. If you go back and look, yes, you are correct. He did a lot of that stuff, but he did it as retribution for the heel. Because let's face it, Hogan, especially with his size, a guy that size, that with that body, doesn't look like he should be able to, and wasn't particularly able to, do Ricky Steamboat arm drags and shit. He wrestled more in Japan than he did in the WWF, but at the same time, Vince Jr. didn't care the fuck about the matches. It was the issue and the sizzle, not the steak. So Hogan would come in, he'd do his thing where he shined for a couple minutes, and then the heels would cheat and either use numbers advantage or a manager or illegal tactics or whatever and get a little steam on him. And when he decided it was time, then he'd hook up and he'd give the heel back all the shit they gave to him. He'd punch him or he'd hit him with a chair or he'd fucking rake their back or gout or whatever the case, and leg drop, and there you go. And the way in context and the way that he was presented, it worked, but you weren't going to get any, not only scientific wrestling, because he wasn't that kind of a baby face, but you weren't going to get, okay, lock up, headlock, one tackle, drop down, hip toss, drop kick, arm drag, get it again, because he ain't going to be doing that shit anyway. And he couldn't. He didn't need to. So there you go.
Was there a big argument, or I guess at the time, would there have been a big argument in general about the idea of putting your belt on someone so big who was a babyface?
Well, it's sort of like that the WWF style, which became the WWF style, was always the bizarro world of wrestling anyway. What worked there was the opposite of what worked almost everywhere else in the country. In the New York territory, they always had a babyface champion for long runs. Everywhere else, the babyface had to win the title because it would make him somewhat emasculated if he didn't after a long chase, but never held it a long time because the wisdom was that the heel champion that the babyface could chase, the money was in the chase, not the capture. Quality of matches. Let's face it, even though that the New York territory had a bunch of quality workers go through there at one time or another because there was a lot of money to be made there, even the guys who had great matches everywhere else didn't really have them there because the rings were hard, the buildings were big, the matches were short, and they were used to get in and get out. right? And every once in a while, you'd get the guys that had the pride in the profession. But otherwise, if in New York or in Philadelphia or in Boston, they're not asking you like they do in Memphis or in St. Louis or in Atlanta or Tampa, go 30 minutes, get juice, complicated finish. We're going to try to get some heat, come back next week with a rematch. Instead, just go 8 minutes and do something simple. So that's the whole issue was the New York territory was built and had constant ownership and administration for so long doing the same stuff. That's how their fans were educated. And we've talked about how they always like the ethnic superhero because that's a great majority of their audience, especially when from the 40s through the 80s, the English language media took the piss out of wrestling every chance they got in New York. The ethnic heroes were over. That didn't fly in most other places, maybe in Los Angeles, down in Texas. But you wanted the all-American babyface hero to be the top guy because that reflected the audience. It was different in the Northeast. Do you put a belt on a guy that big was your question. The reason for that was how do you get it off of him? That's why Andre never wore a championship belt, or they did a couple of regional things just for shits and grins. But Vince didn't have that issue because he wanted Hogan to be a superhero. And until he got everything he could out of it, he didn't want to think about taking it off of him. And then he could make a super villain. And if he had another superhero in the wings, because that's the way that they always did it. So they did a lot of things that were against conventional wisdom in the wrestling business everywhere else in the country, but only because they had the advantage of having educated their fans in their territory to what worked, just like every other promoter did. They just educated them to different things. Make sense?
Jim, what will likely be our final question here this week, sent to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com.
Right before Brian droops over and falls asleep.
From Edgar Friendly in Ireland.
Edgar Friendly in Ireland.
Do you know Edgar?
Now I know you're pulling my leg.
I guess you don't. I was watching AEW Rampage and listening to Adam Cole's build weight of 202 pounds. There's not a chance in hell that Adam Cole weighs 202 pounds, but comparing him to Bryan Danielson, who is listed at 197 pounds, it got me thinking. Who decides the wrestler's build weight? Danielson is by no means a big guy, but he lifts weights and has some muscle to his frame. Unless Adam Cole has a 30-pound dick, there is no chance in hell he outweighs Bryan Danielson. Who decides the weights? I'm assuming it's the wrestlers themselves. Adam Cole, with the talent of the sexy boy, but the body of an actual boy, woke up and decided, you know what? Today I'm 202 pounds. Sure you are, Adam. Sure you are.
You know, they finally did take my advice. Remember when I said they announced Pac and the ripped, shredded fucking beast that he is at 188 or whatever? I said, you couldn't give him 205? I said, you can bump these things up. Nobody can really tell the difference when you get that close. So what do? They do it for Adam and they give him 20 pounds. And the one guy that people can't believe because that's all they're talking about is how he's shrinking. So many things with this. You are correct in that it has to be somewhat believable. And I've mentioned they announced, like I said, Pac at 180 something. I thought at one point, I heard that said. I don't know if they read it wrong or whatever. But they announced him in the low twos. There's a few other guys. Darby, they give 150 pounds to, I think you could say 170. My God, that's still minute for a grown man. But yeah, it's when you can see through it, it's not good. As to who decides, again, traditionally, what would happen is a lot of times when a guy was new in the territory, I've been the ring announcer, I've done this, and I've seen ring announcers do this. When they get in the ring announcer would go up if he didn't know him, say, well, hey, what's your weight in hometown? And they'd tell him, and he'd announce it. Because the guys in the territory days had the good common sense. Even if they didn't weigh 200 pounds, they were going to be announced at 200 pounds. And because everybody was announced over 200 pounds, you didn't have a frame of reference really to pick it apart. Jerry Jarrett, I've mentioned in the Tennessee territory, was the smartest one. He was the only guy that was announced at less than 200. He was 198 pounds, which made him the sympathetic babyface underdog in a land of older, meaner, rougher-looking, bigger fucking guys. Often, like I said, the wrestler will decide his weight in his hometown, and that's part of his gimmick, and he just tells it when he comes in a new territory, and they use that. Other times I, in the past, have just gone through when I was making ring announcers sheets for the ring announcer. I know where a guy's from. If I gave him a weight, I figured it was close, and it made him sound like he was full grown without being a red flag of, oh my God, there's no way he weighs that. But, that's the thing, especially, usually the guys can determine where they're from and how much they weigh. And there's been a couple times I've said, no, add 15 pounds to that. Your hometown's fine. And then, and a lot of times when you're doing TV and you have to make a list for the graphics people, for the lower thirds, weight, hometown, etc., when you're doing a wrestling program, not sports entertainment. Now, I know they don't have weights in hometowns. You type it up and give it to the fucking graphics guy, and that becomes the official TV list. And if somebody wants to gain or lose weight or move, they've got to tell us because the graphics guy has this other information. But, and hometowns can be from everywhere. Steve Austin was from Texas, but he wasn't from Victoria. He just liked the name of the town. Stan Lane was from Greensboro, but for a party guy like Stan Lane, he thought Delray Beach, Florida sounded fucking cooler than Greensboro. So it just depends.
All right. Well, that's it for today. Let's get a few songs and we'll get out of here.
Not even trying to disguise your complete contempt for this program today.
With that, the drive-thru is closed.
Somebody pissed in your pudding this morning, I'll tell you that.
I don't eat no pudding in the morning. That's you.
When you were up at 4 o'clock, I don't eat no pudding in the morning, huh?
Of course, you can hear the Jim Cornette Experience when it debuts this weekend, whenever we release it, wherever you are, wherever you find your favorite podcast, and of course, the drive-thru next week, right back here, wherever you find your favorite podcast. It will be better next week.
It can't hardly be anything but.
Right here on the drive-thru. Go through the archive today, patreon.com/Cornette. $5 a month gets you access to the archive going back to the beginning in 2013. Patreon.com/Cornette. Don't forget to subscribe to the official Jim Cornette YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and search for Jim Cornette. It'll be the very first thing that pops up. Full episodes, clips of episodes, omnibus collections, all ready for you to share and watch. And all with the exclusive and popular Travis Heckel artwork, the official Jim Cornette YouTube channel. You can follow Jim on Twitter at @TheJimCornette. You can follow me on Twitter at @GreatBrianLast. You can hear me on the 605 Superpodcast at 605pod.com or available wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Don't forget about Cornette's Collectibles at JimCornette.com, or at least go to JimCornette.com and learn about the latest card auction.
Yes, and the collectibles are coming soon. I should have some news at the end of this week on a date that the store will be reopening under the Feather Bottom administration.
At JimCornette.com. The drive-thru is brought to you by the law office of Stephen Pinu, 888-692-8084. Get even with Stephen at newlawoffice.com. Until this weekend on The Experience, and next week right back here on the drive-thru. For Jim Cornette, I'm the Great Brian Last. Tally-ho!